Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into something that a lot of Catholics don't even know exists: a powerful, intellectually rigorous critique of Islam, written by one of the greatest minds in church history.
That's right. We're talking about St. Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor himself, and what he wrote in his masterwork, Summa contra Gentiles. This isn't modern polemics. This is 13th century Catholic intellectual firepower.
And here's the thing: what Aquinas wrote nearly 800 years ago is still remarkably relevant today. He wasn't writing out of hatred or ignorance, he was writing as a theologian, using reason and evidence to defend the Christian faith.
Exactly. So let's break down what Aquinas actually said about Muhammad and Islam and why it matters for Catholics today who want to understand their faith and be able to explain it to others.
So Aquinas starts by looking at how Islam spread, and he makes a really striking observation. He says Muhammad enticed peoples with the promise of carnal pleasures, to the desire of which the concupiscence of the flesh instigates.
In other words, Aquinas is saying that Islam, at its founding, appealed to man's lower appetites. And he's not just making this up, he's pointing to actual teachings.
Right? And this is where it gets interesting. If you look at Surah 4, Ayah 24 in the Quran, it says that married women are forbidden to Muslim men, except, and here's the key part, those your right hand possesses.
And that phrase, right hand possesses, refers to slaves and prisoners of war. So the Quran is essentially saying that these women are lawful for Muslim men, even if they're already married.
And this isn't some obscure interpretation. There's a hadith, Sunan Abu Dawud 2155, which is considered authentic. That gives the context. It describes a military expedition where Muslim soldiers wanted to have relations with female captives, but hesitated because those women had pagan husbands.
Um, and then the Quranic verse comes down, essentially permitting it. That's a very different moral framework than what we see in Christianity.
Completely different. Christ elevated marriage. He spoke of the two becoming one flesh. He condemned even lustful thoughts. The contrast couldn't be sharper.
And Aquinas saw this. He recognized that a religion which gains followers by appealing to carnal desires is operating on a fundamentally different level than one that calls men to sanctity, self-denial, and the cross.
Now, Aquinas also critiques the content of Islamic teaching. He says Muhammad mingled the truths which he taught with many fables and most false doctrines.
And he gives a specific example that's really fascinating. In Surah 5, Ayah 110, the Quran tells a story about Jesus as a child molding a bird out of clay and then breathing life into it.
Sounds miraculous, right? But here's the problem. That story doesn't come from any authentic Christian source. It comes from the infancy gospel of Thomas, which is a known forgery, a fanciful text that the church rejected centuries before Muhammad was even born.
So the Quran takes a fake story from a rejected text and presents it as divine revelation. That's a significant problem if you're claiming to be the final prophet of God.
It really is. And Aquinas is sharp enough to catch this. He's essentially saying, look, if this revelation were truly from God, why is it borrowing from known forgeries?
That's the power of Aquinas. He's not just making emotional arguments. He's using historical evidence and logical reasoning.
Now, another major point Aquinas makes is about miracles. He says Muhammad did not add any signs of supernatural agency, which alone are a fitting witness to divine inspiration.
This is huge. In the Catholic understanding, miracles are God's way of authenticating a messenger. Moses had the plagues and the parting of the Red Sea. Elijah called down fire from heaven. And Jesus, he healed the sick, raised the dead, and rose from the grave himself.
But what about Muhammad? What miracles did he perform that can be historically verified?
Well, Muslims often point to the splitting of the moon mentioned in Surah 54. But here's the issue. There's no independent eyewitness testimony from anywhere else in the world. If the moon actually split in two, you'd think someone in China, India, or Rome would have noticed and written about it.
Exactly. Aquinas says that without these supernatural signs, there's no solid foundation for believing that Muhammad was divinely inspired. He even makes a pointed comment. He says the power of arms that Muhammad used is not lacking even to robbers and tyrants.
Ouch, that's direct. But it's historically accurate. Islam spread rapidly through military conquest.
And the Quran itself commands this. Surah 2, Ayah 216 says, fighting has been made obligatory upon you believers, though you dislike it.
So it's not just that some Muslims chose violence, it's presented as a religious duty. That's built into the foundation of the faith.
Compare that to Christianity. Christ told Peter to put away his sword. He allowed himself to be crucified rather than call down legions of angels. The early church grew not through conquest, but through the blood of martyrs.
The contrast is night and day, and Aquinas wants Catholics to see that, to understand that the way a religion spreads tells you something about its nature.
Now, there's one more argument Aquinas makes that I think is really compelling. He says that no divine oracles of prophets in a previous age bore witness to Muhammad.
This is important. In Christianity, we have centuries of prophecy pointing to Christ. Isaiah 53 describes the suffering servant. Micah names Bethlehem as the birthplace of the Messiah. Daniel gives a timeline. The Old Testament is full of signposts pointing to Jesus.
But where are the prophecies about Muhammad? Muslims sometimes try to find him in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 18 or the Gospel of John. But these interpretations are really stretching it.
And here's the irony. Aquinas points out Muslims claim the Bible has been corrupted and can't be trusted, yet they appeal to that same Bible when they think it supports their claims.
It's a pick and choose approach. Use it when it helps, dismiss it when it doesn't.
Aquinas calls this out directly. He says Muhammad didn't allow his followers to read the Old and New Testaments, lest he should thereby be convicted of falsehood.
That's a powerful observation. If you're confident your revelation is true, why would you discourage your followers from reading the scriptures that came before?
Because comparison might raise uncomfortable questions.
Exactly. And that's what Aquinas is doing in Summa Contra Gentiles. He's inviting that comparison. He's saying, look at the evidence, look at the fruits, look at how these faiths began and spread, and then make a reasoned judgment.
And for Catholics today, this is such an important model. We don't have to be afraid of tough questions. Our faith has been examined and defended by brilliant minds for 2,000 years.
Aquinas didn't shy away from engaging with Islam intellectually, and neither should we. This isn't about hatred or bigotry, it's about truth.
And ultimately, it's about souls. We believe that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. If that's true, then we owe it to everyone, including our Muslim neighbors, to share that truth with charity and clarity.
So if you haven't read Summa Contra Gentiles, maybe this is your sign. Aquinas has so much to teach us, not just about philosophy and theology, but about how to be bold, reasoned defenders of the faith.
Amen to that. Thanks for joining us, everyone. If this episode helped you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And as always,
God bless and keep the faith.